Earth was dying. Not with a bang, but a slow, suffocating gasp. Decades of unchecked pollution, relentless resource depletion, and runaway climate change had turned the vibrant blue planet into a choked, acidic husk. Vast swathes of land were uninhabitable, bleached white by relentless heat, or submerged by rising, toxic oceans. The air itself was a perpetual, acrid smog that burned the lungs and painted the skies a sickly grey. Daily life was a grim struggle for survival, marked by dwindling rations, dwindling hope, and the constant rasping cough that was now the signature sound of humanity. Skyscrapers, once symbols of ambition, stood like skeletal monuments to a forgotten era, shrouded in an eternal suffocating haze. Amidst this slow apocalypse, a flicker of deceptive hope had emerged years ago. The Xylons. They hadn't arrived in ships, but in minds, their contact a series of subtle, telepathic broadcasts that resonated directly within human consciousness. Their voices were a symphony of soothing melodies, promising peace, profound wisdom, and most importantly, aid. They introduced themselves as a benevolent, highly advanced civilization from a distant, lush world they called Vesperia. "Come, friends," their thoughts would chime, a perfect, harmonious chorus. "Our world is bountiful. We share our abundance. We protect." Desperate, humanity clung to their every word, willing to believe in any paradise. No human had ever visited Vesperia, nor had a Xylon ever set foot on Earth. Their connection was purely telepathic, purely based on trust and desperation. At the helm of humanity's last-ditch effort, the Exodus Initiative, was Dr. Elias Thorne. He was a pragmatist, a seasoned leader, whose face was etched with the heavy burden of command. He understood the monumental gamble they were taking, placing humanity's last fragile hope in the telepathic promises of unseen benefactors. He carried the weight of millions of lives on his shoulders, lives that had placed their unwavering faith in his judgment and the Xylon siren song. Then there was Ilara. Brilliant, yes, but undeniably eccentric. On Earth, she'd been dismissed as a mad engineer, a quirky tinkerer, whose laboratory was a glorious mess of discarded electronics, sprouting fungi, and humming contraptions. She had seen Earth's environmental demise coming decades ago, developing radical atmospheric purification theories that were scoffed at by the serious scientists. She'd tried to filter the choking air using stacks of old computer fans and overgrown, genetically modified mushrooms, and sometimes, surprisingly, it actually worked, producing pockets of breathable air. But no one had ever believed she could scale it. Ilara had an uncanny knack for making something out of nothing, seeing potential in what others deemed junk. She also had an odd habit of humming disjointed tunes to herself, and would often blurt out seemingly irrelevant, funny comments that only she seemed to find amusing, which often made people shake their heads and sigh. "The Xylons sound like a lullaby, Elias," she'd once mused to Dr. Thorne, chewing on the end of a charred wire. "But sometimes, lullabies put you to sleep forever." Thorne had just grunted, dismissing it as another of Ilara's odd pronouncements. As Earth's breathable atmosphere thinned to dangerous levels and the last of their food synthesizers began to fail, Dr. Thorne made the final, agonizing call. A desperate plea was broadcast through the Xylon's telepathic channel. The response was instantaneous, a wave of melodic relief washing over the human survivors. "Come, friends. Vesperia opens its heart. We shall protect you from the storm. Your journey will be swift. Your new home awaits." The final ships, patched together from salvaged parts and fueled by sheer desperation, launched from a dying Earth. They were humanity's last hope, a tiny fleet carrying the dreams and fears of all that remained. Their destination, Vesperia, the promised land, guided by the sweet, deceptive whispers of the Xylons. The journey through the void was a blur of recycled air and whispered prayers. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the last human ships broke through Vesperia's swirling purple atmosphere. The sight that greeted them was, at first, breathtaking. The planet below was a symphony of deep indigo and shimmering violet, punctuated by constant internal flashes of light that danced like distant lightning. It was alien, majestic, and utterly unlike anything they had ever seen. The Xylons' telepathic voices, as calm and melodious as ever, guided them through the turbulent upper atmosphere. Welcome, friends. Your sanctuary awaits. Below, a colossal, iridescent, protective dome shimmered on the surface, a beacon of safety amidst the vibrant yet unsettling alien landscape. It was enormous, easily large enough to house every remaining human, glowing with a soft, inviting light. A wave of profound relief washed over the weary travelers. This was it, their new home. Their salvation, non tuili. Humans disembarked, stepping onto the strange spongy ground beneath the dome. The air within felt cool, filtered and breathable, a stark contrast to the toxic air they had breathed for decades on Earth. They began to set up temporary shelters, carefully uncrating the last of their precious Earth seeds, hoping to cultivate new life in this promised land. The Xylons, true to their word, did not appear physically. Their presence remained telepathic, a constant, soothing hum in the back of their minds. Rest, friends. Recover. Vesperia embraces you. Modicum speaks aloud. For a few weeks, life inside the dome settled into a fragile routine. The initial relief, however, slowly began to give way to a creeping unease. The air, though breathable, felt strangely heavy, almost cloying. The dome's internal air filtration systems, sophisticated as they appeared, seemed to be working overtime, struggling to maintain the pristine conditions. A faint acrid smell occasionally drifted through the vents, dismissed as a temporary malfunction. More disturbingly, the shimmering material of the dome itself began to show microscopic signs of wear, a barely perceptible weeping of a thin, corrosive liquid along its inner surface. Dr. Elias Thorne, ever the pragmatist, noted these anomalies in his logs, a knot tightening in his stomach. Then, the insidious breakdown began. It wasn't a sudden catastrophic implosion, but a gradual, terrifying decay. Thin, spiderweb cracks started to appear in the dome's shimmering shell, almost invisible at first. Then they widened, allowing tiny, unseen droplets of the outside world to filter in. The internal air filtration systems, already struggling, sputtered and failed completely, grinding to a halt with alarming finality. The acrid smell intensified, burning their nostrils, and then the acid rain itself began to fall inside the dome. Not a deluge, but a fine, deadly mist that condensed on surfaces, hissing as it corroded metal and left angry red welts on exposed skin. Panic, raw and visceral, erupted within the human colony. They tried to patch the cracks, to restart the filters, to use emergency respirators, but it was useless. The dome was compromised, and the very air they breathed was turning into poison. Already weakened from Earth's harsh final years, humans began to sicken rapidly. Their lungs burned, their skin blistered, and their bodies, exposed to Vesperia's truly toxic environment, started to dissolve. And as they died, a horrifying truth, a revelation more chilling than any acid rain, dawned upon them. The Xylons had not saved them, they had lured them. As human bodies succumbed to the corrosive environment, they released pungent, acidic vapors, strange elemental byproducts that diffused into the dome's atmosphere. These very vapors were what the Xylons desired. This was their true, sinister purpose. Through the telepathic link, the Xylons' voices remained calm, melodious, but now they carried an unmistakable undertone of chilling satisfaction. Such fragile beings. So inefficient, yet their suffering creates such beautiful energy. They might even subtly amplify the painful sensations of the dying, a horrific, calculated cruelty designed to maximize the release of these precious chemical compounds, which were perhaps crucial for their advanced living technology, a rare energy source, or even a necessary nutrient for their own alien biology. Humans to the Xylons were not friends or refugees. They were simply a biological resource, a slow-release chemical factory. Dr. Elias Thorne watched in horror as his people, his hope, withered before his eyes. The soothing Xylon whispers were now a monstrous mockery. Alara, however, amidst the despair, felt a different kind of fury ignite within her, a stubborn, defiant spark of that old madness. As bodies lay still, and the air grew thick with death, and the Xylon's satisfied hums, she knew she couldn't give up. Not now. Not ever. Despair hung heavy in the air, thicker than the corrosive mist seeping through the failing dome. The human colony was a ghost town, half its population gone, their silent forms stark reminders of the Xylon's monstrous betrayal. The air burned, thirst gnawed, and the constant hum of the Xylon's satisfied telepathy, now laced with a chilling triumph, was a torment worse than any physical pain. But Alara refused to surrender. While others wept or simply lay down to die, a familiar, stubborn spark ignited within her. It was the same fiery refusal to accept defeat that had driven her on Earth. Her madness, the relentless urge to tinker, to create, to find a solution where none seemed to exist, surged to the forefront. She started rummaging through the wreckage of their hopes. Broken containers, discarded equipment, ripped tarpaulins. She was a scavenger, a magpie of forgotten junk, seeing potential where others saw only ruin. Her hums, usually disjointed tunes, now took on a frantic, almost manic rhythm. "What are you doing, Alara?" rasped a survivor, her voice hoarse, watching Alara meticulously sorting through charred debris. "Playing with trash? We're dying. Your inventions never worked on Earth. They won't work here." Another coughed, spitting blood. "Just let it end, Loopy Lara. Your little contraptions won't save us." Ilara barely registered their words. She was often found muttering to herself, sketching bizarre, half-formed diagrams on ruined datapads with a stubby, acid-stained finger. "Just need conductivity, absorbency, yes, like a big sponge, but not a sponge." "Ha ha, see?" she'd exclaim, holding up a mangled piece of plastic tubing that no one else understood. Her strange humor, usually dismissed, now seemed to mock their very suffering. She was an outcast on Earth, and here, facing the apocalypse, she remained one, her eccentricity only amplified by the grim reality. She worked non-stop, an almost manic energy driving her. Sleep was a luxury she couldn't afford, snatching only short, restless bursts, her mind already racing with calculations and bizarre connections. Her obsession was simple: water. Without potable water, they would all die, and Vesperia offered nothing but corrosive, deadly rain. Her idea, born of desperation and a lifetime of unconventional thinking, was equally simple, yet audacious: a primitive purification system. She started by gathering tarpaulins, ripped from old supply crates. These she stretched and angled to collect the acid rain, funneling it into makeshift containers, broken storage bins, cracked helmets, anything that could hold liquid. Next, the filtration layers. This was the real challenge, given their limited resources. She directed the few remaining able-bodied survivors to collect sand and pebbles from Vesperia's desolate, acid-scarred landscape. It was painstaking work. They had to wear their disintegrating hazmat suits and move quickly to avoid the corrosive mist. Ilara meticulously instructed them on which types of pebbles to gather, showing an uncanny knowledge of Vesperia's geology. "These ones," she'd point, "they have a funny little shimmer, good for burping the acid, you see." Then came the charcoal. This was the trickiest part. Their emergency kits had very little. Ilara, with a grim determination, found a way to create more. Using spare oxygen canisters from their ships, she engineered a controlled, low-oxygen burn, setting alight small pieces of their ship's non-toxic insulation material. It was a dangerous process, risking an explosion, but it yielded precious amounts of fine, black charcoal. This was her secret weapon, the magic ingredient she'd experimented with for years on Earth. With her scavenged materials, she constructed a multi-layered filtration system. Imagine a series of stacked perforated containers. The top layer was coarse pebbles, then a layer of finer sand, followed by a thick, dark layer of the crushed charcoal. The tarpaulins fed the collected acid rain into the topmost container, allowing it to slowly drip down through each successive layer. The science behind it, though crude, was surprisingly effective. The pebbles and sand provided basic physical filtration, catching larger particulates. But the true magic lay in the charcoal's immense porosity, capable of absorbing vast amounts of impurities and, crucially, neutralizing many of the complex acidic compounds. And Ilara's shimmering Vesperian pebbles likely contained specific minerals with natural neutralizing properties, reacting with the acid as the water slowly percolated through. The Xylons, if they had observed closely, would have scoffed. To their advanced, bioengineered systems, this was akin to trying to filter a galaxy with a coffee strainer. But they weren't observing closely. They were busy basking in the beautiful energy of humanity's dying breaths. The moment of truth arrived. Ilara, her hands blackened with charcoal and grit, watched as the last drop of acid rain, funneled from a makeshift tarp, disappeared into the top layer. She waited, her breath held tight. Slowly, painstakingly, a single, cloudy drop began to form at the bottom of the lowest container. Then, another. And another. It wasn't perfectly clear, but it wasn't burning. It didn't hiss. She carefully collected a small amount in a clean, salvaged beaker. With a solemn, almost ritualistic gesture, she cautiously raised it to her lips. She tasted it. It was water. Plain, pure, drinkable water. A single tear, acidic against her grimy cheek, rolled down her face. It was the first sign of emotion she had allowed herself in days. A quiet testament to the sheer, impossible triumph against overwhelming despair. She hadn't just filtered water. She had ignited a flicker of hope in the suffocating darkness. The murky water in the beaker was both a miracle and an insult. Ilara held it out, her face smudged with charcoal and triumph, but the survivors recoiled. "It's a trick," one rasped, his voice raw. "It'll just kill us slower." "You're losing it, Ilara." "It's just water," she stated, her voice quiet but firm, holding the beaker steady despite her trembling hands. "Safe to drink." Dr. Elias Thorne, gaunt and weary, approached. He looked at the water, then at Ilara's determined, almost manic eyes. He was skeptical, but the sheer desperation in the air was a heavy counterweight to his doubts. Over half their people were gone, their supplies were failing. They were trapped in a dissolving dome, slowly being turned into chemical sustenance for a monstrous alien race. They had nothing left to lose. "Give me some," he croaked. A stunned silence fell. Ilara poured a small amount into a clean cup. Thorne hesitated for a heartbeat, then, with a deep breath, drank it. He waited. Nothing. He drank more. A flicker of life returned to his eyes. A sensation of genuine hydration he hadn't felt in months. It's just water," he murmured, a profound wonder in his voice. "She's right. It's just water." Seeing their leader drink a few more, those closest to death from dehydration stumbled forward. They drank, hesitantly at first, then ravenously. And they didn't die. In fact, within minutes a faint glimmer of vitality returned to their drawn faces. Desperation had finally trumped cynicism. Humanity, facing extinction, grudgingly placed its last, desperate hope in the hands of the mad engineer. Ilara didn't gloat. She simply nodded, her eyes already scanning the ruined outpost. "All right, listen up," she commanded, her voice surprisingly strong. "This is just step one. We need more water, fast. You, start tearing down those old comms arrays. We need more tarpaulin. You too, collect more pebbles. The shimmering ones, everyone move." To their own surprise, they obeyed. They were exhausted, broken, but a new, fierce light had kindled in their eyes. Ilara pushed them relentlessly, demanding meticulous work in the corrosive environment, but her odd humor, her unexpected quips, kept them from truly breaking. "Come on, if this doesn't work," she'd say, dragging a heavy power cell, "at least we'll have a really clean grave." "Huh!" They'd look at her, bewildered, then a few grim chuckles would escape. Her madness was now a strange, unconventional form of leadership. She herself barely slept, driven by an almost manic energy, constantly muttering calculations and bizarre ideas under her breath. But Ilara's vision stretched far beyond simple water purification. Once they had established a sustainable, though crude, water supply, she gathered Dr. Thorne and the few remaining core scientists. "This dome is dying," she stated, pointing at a fresh crack weeping acid, "and making water one drop at a time won't save us in the long run. We need to terraform the entire atmosphere, A stunned silence. "Terraform?" Thorn whispered, incredulous. "Alara, we're barely surviving." "We use the principles of the filter, but on a massive scale," she explained, her eyes burning with fierce conviction. "Vesperia's atmosphere is full of the very elements we need to neutralize the acid. We just need to process it. We'll create a genesis sphere." She sketched furiously on a dusty console screen, detailing a multi-layered atmospheric purifier, not a physical dome, but a colossal, self-sustaining system of filters suspended in Vesperia's upper skies. "We'll lift modified spaceship propulsion systems, attach self-assembling filters made from Vesperian minerals, and gradually, we'll clean the air. The filtered air will then descend, pushing back the acid clouds." It sounded utterly insane, but they had seen her water filter. They had seen the Xylon's betrayal. They had nothing to lose. Cosas animana. Their greatest challenge now was resources. Alara needed specific, large quantities of Vesperian minerals. This meant daring expeditions into Vesperia's most toxic zones, far beyond the failing dome. The odds were impossible. Then, a new, vital piece of the puzzle emerged. Since their arrival, a subtle, almost imperceptible hum had occasionally echoed through the human mind-linked systems. Not the Xylon's melodic, domineering whispers, but something softer, more hesitant. It came from the Whispering Ones. They were a small, hidden dissident group of Xylons, outcasts from their own collective, who had silently disagreed with the main Xylon population's unethical ways. They had witnessed the humans suffering with a deep, silent shame. Now, as Alara's ambitious plans took shape, the Whispering Ones decided the time was right. They made direct but clandestine contact with Alara's mind. Their telepathic voice was hushed, distinct from the main Xylon collective. "We regret our collective's actions, Engineer Alara. We sensed your plight. We know of places, rich in the crystals you seek. They lie deep, protected from our collective's awareness. We can guide you." Alara felt a jolt of shock, then fierce validation. So her crazy idea wasn't so crazy after all. There was a faint glimmer of goodness, even in this treacherous alien world. She immediately informed Dr. Thorne. Hesitantly, they agreed to trust this splinter group. The Whispering Ones, communicating through subtle mental maps and precise coordinates, guided human teams on perilous expeditions deep into Vesperia's most corrosive and dangerous zones. Guided by Xylon minds, but using human courage and ingenuity, they managed to extract the vital minerals Alara needed. Rare crystalline structures that Alara, with her intuitive understanding of chemistry, knew would react perfectly with the acid, neutralizing it on a massive scale. The building of the Genesis Sphere was an epic undertaking. They repurposed ship propulsion engines to carry immense filtering arrays into the upper atmosphere. Humans worked tirelessly, their last remaining power tools grinding against alien rock, assembling the complex, multi-layered filters according to Alara's intricate designs. It was a race against time, as more humans still succumbed to the corrosive environment within their dying dome. Alara was everywhere, troubleshooting, pushing, inspiring. She'd fix a circuit with a hair clip, then use a cargo net to scoop atmospheric particulates for analysis, her madness, now understood as pure, unadulterated genius. Finally, with their last ounce of strength, the Genesis Sphere was ready. Suspended high above Vesperia, a faint, translucent shimmer in the perpetual purple clouds, it hummed with a quiet power. A monumental, desperate gamble. With bated breath, the human survivors watched the sky. High above them, barely visible through the still thick purple haze, the Genesis Sphere shimmered faintly, a monumental testament to Alara's madness and humanity's desperate will to live. It was powered by their last remaining ship engines, repurposed and modified, sending currents of purified air down towards the dying colony. The change wasn't immediate. It was gradual, like a slow dawn breaking after a long, dark night. The acid mist within the failing dome began to thin, then to clear. The burning sensation in their lungs eased, replaced by the cool, clean breath of truly filtered air. Outside the dome, where the Genesis Sphere's influence spread, the swirling purple clouds slowly began to lighten, revealing hints of a deep, vibrant blue. The air itself seemed to hum with a new, healthy energy. Vesperia began to transform. Native Vesperian flora, once adapted to the harsh acidity and dark skies, reacted to the purified atmosphere in unexpected ways. They bloomed in riotous, impossible colors, vibrant greens and iridescent purples that hadn't been seen before. What was once a deadly, toxic landscape was slowly becoming lush, even paradisiacal, more vibrant and hospitable than Earth had been in centuries. The humans, for the first time in their lives, breathed truly clean air. Their skin, once blistered and raw, began to heal. Energy, long a forgotten luxury, surged back into their tired bodies. Hope, that most precious and fragile of commodities, flooded back. Clara, utterly exhausted but radiant with triumph, stood amidst the thriving colony, no longer the mad engineer, but a revered visionary. She still hummed her odd tunes, but now people smiled, understanding the genius behind the eccentricity. Miles away, deep within their shimmering crystalline cities, the main, Xylon collective, felt the change. Their initial response was confusion, then alarm. The vital biochemical vapors they so desperately craved were no longer permeating the atmosphere. Their human resource, supposedly dying, was thriving. Then came the horrifying realization. The very atmosphere they had cultivated for millennia, the specific blend of acidic compounds that sustained their unique biology and powered their living technology, was being neutralized. The Genesis sphere wasn't just purifying the air for humans, it was making Vesperia's atmosphere toxic for the Xylons. Explain why the clean atmosphere harmed them. The Xylons had evolved to directly absorb specific atmospheric acids as their primary energy source, much like plants on Earth absorb sunlight. Or perhaps the biochemical vapors from dying species were their essential nutrient. Without these, they began to starve. Their bioluminescence, once bright and vibrant, dimmed to a dull, sickly glow. Their physical forms, usually fluid and graceful, became rigid and translucent, almost brittle. Their elegant, intricate technology, designed to run on the planet's previous atmospheric composition, sputtered and failed. Their melodic telepathic calls, once a symphony of power, became ragged, filled with desperation and growing confusion. They were collapsing, literally and figuratively, from clean air poisoning. Elder Xylos, his form a barely visible wisp of light, felt the profound dread. The primitive humans, whom they had scorned and exploited, had not only survived, but had fundamentally altered the very fabric of Vesperia. Their grand, cruel scheme had backfired catastrophically. The humans, once their victims, now held all the power. The power dynamics had shifted completely. The Xylons, once mighty and arrogant, were now weak, dying and utterly bewildered, facing extinction in the beautiful, clean air that was humanity's salvation. They watched, helpless, as their world, their source of life, became their tomb. Elder Xylos, his translucent form flickering precariously, extended a desperate mental plea towards Outpost Echo. His once melodic telepathic voice was now a ragged, fear-filled whisper. Help us, engineers. The very air it consumes us. Your brilliance has undone us. We perish. Dr. Elias Thorne received the message. The Xylons' desperate fear, a stark contrast to their former arrogance. He gathered Ilara and the core human survivors. A heated debate erupted. Let them die, one survivor spat, her face contorted with months of pain and betrayal. They used us. Let them taste their own poison. Revenge won't save us, or build a future, Ilara countered, her eyes fixed on the distant, fading glow of the Xylon cities. It just makes us as bad as them. Thorne, ever the pragmatist, saw the bigger picture. We hold all the cards now. They have knowledge of this planet we don't, and leaving them to die, it's not who we are. But we will make them understand. Humanity, once victims, now dictated terms. Dr. Thorne and Ilara laid out the conditions for Xylon survival, firm and uncompromising. The Xylons had to surrender all advanced weaponry and any tools that could threaten humanity. Their magnificent living technology, once a symbol of their power, would be placed under human oversight. They must reveal all their scientific and ecological knowledge about Vesperia and its unique energies. No more secrets. They had to agree to live within designated, controlled zones on Vesperia, specific areas where a carefully managed, Xylon-friendly atmosphere would be maintained by human technology. These zones would be smaller, contained bubbles within the larger, clean Genesis sphere. This visually symbolized their containment and their new dependence on human ingenuity. Most importantly, they had to acknowledge their deception and publicly, telepathically, seek forgiveness from humanity. It was a bitter, humiliating pill for the once proud Xylons. Elder Xylos, his very essence dimming, had no choice. Survival dictated complete surrender. His telepathic acceptance, though devoid of its former melody, resonated with a profound, forced humility. Ilara and her team immediately began work on modifying the Genesis sphere's principles. They designed and implemented smaller, localized atmospheric filters within specific Xylon settlements. These compact systems precisely regulated the air composition, creating controlled environments with the exact balance of acidic elements the Xylons needed to survive. The Xylons were no longer masters of Vesperia, but rather inhabitants of specialized environmental reserves, their very existence now reliant on the technology of the species they had tried to exploit. Their once majestic forms now moved with a fragile dependence, their arrogance replaced by a grudging, slowly evolving respect for human resilience. With the main Xylon collective contained and dependent, the Whispering Ones finally emerged from the shadows. They appeared physically before the humans, their subtle bioluminescence, a gentle contrast to the main Xylon's fading glow. They confirmed their secret assistance, their quiet rebellion against their collective's unethical plans. "You risked everything for us," Dr. Thorne stated, his voice filled with genuine gratitude. "You are true allies." Ilara, with a rare, soft smile, extended an invitation. "You and your kind are welcome here. Call your friends, your family, any who believe in a shared ethical future. Vesperia is now a home for all who seek true understanding, not exploitation." The Whispering Ones, their forms brightening with relief and gratitude, began telepathically contacting other dissident Xylons scattered across the galaxy, inviting them to join this new, cooperative society forming on Vesperia. It was a quiet exodus, a gathering of like-minded individuals seeking a future built on collaboration, not deceit. Vesperia transformed. What was once a planet of toxic beauty became a vibrant, multi-species colony, a testament to human resilience and Ilara's visionary genius. With clean air, abundant resources now made accessible through shared Xylon knowledge, and a newfound sense of purpose, humanity flourished. They developed new technologies, building sustainable habitats, and re-establishing scientific research, now focused on understanding and nurturing Vesperia's delicate ecosystem. Humans and the Whispering Ones formed a symbiotic relationship. Humans learned about Vesperia's deep ecological systems and subtle energies from their new Xylon allies, while the Whispering Ones eagerly absorbed human engineering principles and problem-solving methodologies, leading to entirely new hybrid technologies that blended organic alien biology with human mechanical ingenuity. Ilara, no longer the mad engineer, was revered. She continued to invent, constantly tinkering, perhaps even devising ways to terraform other toxic worlds. Her strange jokes and spontaneous hums continued, but now, people laughed with her, not at her, celebrating her unique mind. One Vesperian evening, as the twin suns set, painting the now clean skies in hues of orange and soft blue, Ilara stood beside Dr. Thorne. Below, humans and the Whispering Ones worked side by side, their forms illuminated by the growing bioluminescence of a healthier Vesperia. In the distance, a contained Xylon city pulsed with a subdued, regulated light, a perpetual reminder of their past and their future under humanity's watchful eye. The Genesis sphere shimmered faintly above, a monumental achievement, a symbol of redemption and a new beginning. Vesperia, once a tomb, was now a thriving, multi-species sanctuary. It was a world reborn, built not on the ashes of betrayal, but on the enduring strength of human ingenuity, the surprising compassion of a once scorned people, and the profound transformative lesson that even the most advanced minds can learn humility from the simplest of truths.